Have you ever sat in a room full of people and felt completely invisible? Have you ever watched someone you gave your entire life to look at you like you were nothing, like you were a mistake he couldn't wait to erase? What would you do if your husband, the man who promised to love you forever, walked into a courtroom with his pregnant mistress on his arm, smiled at you, and said, "It's over. I'm starting my real family now"? Nicole was 41 years old when she sat in that courtroom. Her hands were trembling in her lap, her chest was so tight she could barely breathe, and across the aisle, just 15 feet away, sat the man she had loved for 18 years. The man she had built her entire life around, holding hands with a woman half her age. Derek looked relaxed, confident. He leaned back in his chair like this was a business meeting, not the death of a marriage. His new suit was expensive. His haircut was fresh. He looked like a man who had already won, and he wanted Nicole to know it. But it wasn't Derek who made Nicole's stomach churn. It was her, Vanessa, the mistress. She was 26 years old, with long dark hair and perfect makeup. She wore a tight red dress that hugged her pregnant belly, a belly she made sure to touch every few seconds, rubbing it slowly, deliberately, like she was reminding everyone in the room exactly why she had won. And every time she rubbed that belly, she looked directly at Nicole and smiled. Nicole wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole, so she wouldn't have to sit there and endure this humiliation for another second. 18 years. 18 years she had given that man. She had supported him when he had nothing. She had worked double shifts so he could chase his dreams. She had sacrificed her own career, her own ambitions, her own identity, all for him. And when they couldn't have children, when the doctors told her that her body couldn't do what she desperately wanted it to do, she blamed herself. She spent years feeling broken, incomplete, less than a woman. And Derek? Derek held her hand through the tears, kissed her forehead, and told her it didn't matter. He told her she was enough. He lied. Because now, sitting across from her in this cold, sterile courtroom, he had everything she couldn't give him. A younger woman, a baby on the way, a fresh start. And Nicole? Nicole had nothing. Nothing but the shattered pieces of a life she no longer recognized. Derek's lawyer was speaking now, droning on about asset division and custody arrangements and financial support for Derek's growing family. Every word felt like a knife twisting in Nicole's chest. She glanced at her own lawyer, a tired woman who had seen 1,000 cases just like this. The lawyer gave her a small, reassuring nod, but she could see it in her eyes. Pity. Everyone pitied her. The betrayed wife, the barren woman, the fool who didn't see it coming. Nicole's eyes dropped to her lap. She couldn't look at Derek. She couldn't look at Vanessa. She couldn't look at anyone. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was a fool. Maybe she should just sign whatever papers they put in front of her, walk away, and try to forget that the last 18 years ever happened. But then, just as she was about to surrender completely, she noticed something. Something small. Something that didn't make sense. Vanessa was looking at someone. Not Derek, not the judge, not Nicole. Someone else in the room. She followed her gaze, and her heart stopped, because the person Vanessa was staring at, with wide, panicked eyes, was Nicole's younger brother, Marcus. He was sitting in the back row, arms crossed, jaw tight, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Nicole hadn't even noticed him come in. Why was he here? Why did Vanessa look terrified to see him? And why Why did Marcus look like a man carrying a secret he was desperate to hide? Nicole didn't understand, not yet. But something deep in her gut, something primal, something that had been screaming at her for months, finally clicked into place. Something was very, very wrong. And the DNA test sitting in that sealed envelope on the judge's desk, the one Derek had smugly agreed to, confident it would prove his paternity and secure his victory, that test was about to blow this entire courtroom apart. But we're not there yet. To understand what happened next, to understand how Nicole ended up in that chair, broken and humiliated, watching her husband flaunt his pregnant mistress, you need to know how it all began. You need to know the woman Nicole used to be. And trust me, that part of the story, it's just as important. Nicole met Derek when she was 23 years old. She was young, hopeful, and full of dreams. She had just graduated from college with a degree in marketing, and the whole world felt like it was waiting for her. She had plans. Big plans. She wanted to build a career, travel the world, become someone. But then Derek walked into her life, and everything changed. He was charming. God, he was charming. He had this way of looking at her like she was the only woman in the room. He made her laugh until her stomach hurt. He listened to her dreams like they were the most important things he had ever heard. He told her she was beautiful, smart, special, everything she had always wanted to hear but never believed about herself. They dated for 2 years before he proposed. It wasn't a fancy proposal. Just the two of them on a quiet beach at sunset, Derek down on one knee with a ring he had saved for months to buy. Nicole cried. She said yes before he even finished asking. She thought she had found her forever. She thought she was the luckiest woman in the world. They got married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Nicole's parents were skeptical. They thought she was too young, too naive, too quick to give up her own ambitions for a man she barely knew. But Nicole didn't listen. She was in love. And love, she believed, conquered everything. The first few years were good. Hard, but good. Derek was trying to build his own business, a construction company that he swore would make them rich one day. But starting a business takes money, and they didn't have any. So Nicole put her dreams on hold. She took a job she didn't love, an entry-level position at a local company that paid the bills but crushed her soul. She told herself it was temporary. Just until Derek's business took off. Just until they were stable. But temporary turned into years. Derek's business struggled. There were good months and bad months, but mostly bad. Nicole picked up extra shifts, she worked weekends, she cut coupons, skipped meals, wore the same clothes for years, all so Derek could keep chasing his dream. And she never complained. Not once. Because that's what love meant, right? Sacrifice, support, putting someone else's dreams before your own. Derek told her he appreciated her. He told her that one day, when the business was successful, he would give her everything she deserved. He told her she was his rock, his partner, his reason for keeping going. And Nicole believed him. She believed every word. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. She couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened. Maybe it was after the 5th year when Derek's business finally started making money, but he still expected her to work the same grueling hours. Maybe it was after the 8th year, when she suggested going back to school, and he laughed like it was a joke. Maybe it was after the 10th year, when she realized that every conversation they had was about him, his business, his stress, his needs, and never about her. But the thing that broke her the most, the thing that made her feel like a failure in the deepest part of her soul, they couldn't have children. They had tried for years. Nicole wanted a baby more than anything in the world. She wanted to hold her own child, to build a family, to experience that kind of love. But month after month, year after year, the tests came back negative. They saw doctors, specialists. They tried treatments that drained their savings and left Nicole emotionally shattered. And after 5 years of trying, the final diagnosis came. Nicole's body couldn't sustain a pregnancy. The doctors used clinical words like incompatible and unlikely and alternative options. But all Nicole heard was one thing: broken. She was broken. She couldn't do the one thing a woman was supposed to do. She couldn't give her husband a child. Nicole cried for weeks. She blamed herself, even though the doctor said it wasn't her fault. She felt like less of a woman, less of a wife, less of a human being. And Derek? At first, Derek said all the right things. He held her when she cried. He told her it didn't matter. He told her that she was enough, that he didn't need children as long as he had her. Nicole clung to those words like a lifeline. She believed him. She trusted him. But looking back now, sitting in that courtroom with Vanessa's pregnant belly staring her in the face, Nicole realized the truth. Derek had been lying from the very beginning. The distance started slowly. He worked later. He traveled more. He stopped asking about her day, stopped touching her, stopped looking at her the way he used to. Nicole tried to fix it. She planned romantic dinners he didn't show up for. She bought lingerie he didn't notice. She suggested couples therapy, and he laughed it off, saying they didn't need a stranger telling them how to be married. So Nicole did what she had always done. She buried her pain. She told herself it was just a rough patch. She convinced herself that if she just tried harder, loved harder, sacrificed more, things would get better. They didn't. One night, after 15 years of marriage, Derek came home late. Nicole was sitting on the couch, waiting for him, a cold dinner on the table. He walked in, looked at her, and said the words that destroyed her world. "I want a divorce." No warning, no build-up, no conversation. Just 5 words that erased 18 years of her life. Nicole couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. She just stared at him, waiting for him to say it was a joke, waiting for him to take it back. But he didn't. Instead, he said something worse. "I've been seeing someone else. Her name is Vanessa, and she's pregnant." Nicole felt the room spin. Pregnant. The word echoed in her skull like a scream. Pregnant. The one thing she couldn't give him. The one thing that had made her feel worthless for years. Someone else was giving it to him. Derek didn't even look guilty. He looked relieved, like he had been waiting to say this for months and was finally free. He said, "She's giving me what you never could. I'm sorry, Nicole, but I deserve to be a father.
I deserve a real family. A real family? Like the 15 years she had given him meant nothing? Like her love, her sacrifice, her devotion was just a placeholder until something better came along? Nicole didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't beg him to stay. She just sat there, frozen, as the man she had given everything to walked out the door without looking back. And in that moment, something inside her shattered. Not just her heart, her sense of self, her belief in love, her understanding of who she was and what she was worth. She had spent 18 years building a life with this man, and in one night, he burned it all to the ground. But Nicole didn't know, couldn't have known, that the worst betrayal was still coming. Because the woman carrying Derek's baby, she had a secret of her own. A secret that would turn Nicole's world upside down one more time.
The weeks after Derek left were the darkest of Nicole's life. She didn't eat, she barely slept, she wandered through her own house like a ghost, surrounded by memories of a life that no longer existed. Every room held a reminder of him. The kitchen where they used to cook together, the living room where they used to watch movies on Sunday nights, the bedroom where he used to hold her and promise that everything would be okay. Lies. All of it. Lies. Nicole's friends tried to reach out. They called, texted, showed up at her door with wine and sympathy. But Nicole couldn't face them. She couldn't stand the pity in their eyes, the awkward silences, the unspoken question everyone was thinking but no one dared to ask. How did you not see this coming? The truth was, she didn't know. She had replayed every moment of the last few years in her head, searching for signs, searching for clues. And now that she was looking, she saw them everywhere. The late nights at the office that didn't make sense, the business trips that seemed too frequent, the way Derek started password protecting his phone after years of leaving it lying around, the way he stopped touching her, stopped kissing her, stopped looking at her like she mattered. She had ignored all of it. She had made excuses for him because she loved him, because she trusted him, because she couldn't imagine that the man she had sacrificed everything for would ever betray her. Stupid. She felt so stupid. About a month after Derek moved out, the divorce papers arrived. Nicole sat at her kitchen table, staring at the thick stack of documents, her hands shaking. Derek wasn't just asking for a divorce, he was asking for everything. The house, the savings, half of her retirement fund, and buried in the fine print, a clause that made her blood run cold. He was requesting that she pay spousal support to him until his business stabilized. Nicole almost laughed. Almost. After everything she had done for him, after years of working herself to the bone so he could build his dream, he wanted her to keep paying for his life. And why? Because he had a baby on the way? Because Vanessa needed security? Because his growing family deserved support? Nicole threw the papers across the room and sobbed until she couldn't breathe. She wanted to give up. She wanted to sign whatever he asked for just to make it stop, just to never have to see his face again. But somewhere deep inside her, buried beneath the grief and the shame and the exhaustion, a tiny spark of anger flickered to life. No, she would not make this easy for him. He had taken 18 years of her life. He would not take her dignity, too. Nicole hired a lawyer the next day. Her name was Patricia, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had seen every dirty divorce trick in the book. Patricia looked at Derek's demands and actually laughed. "She's delusional," she said, flipping through the pages. "He's trying to bully you into giving up."
That's what men like him do. They count on you being too tired, too broken, too scared to fight back. She looked up at Nicole with hard, knowing eyes. Are you going to let him win? Nicole shook her head. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than despair. She felt fire. Good, Patricia said. Then let's make him regret ever walking into that courtroom. The legal battle began. It was brutal, exhausting, and emotionally draining. Derek showed up to every hearing with Vanessa on his arm, parading her around like a trophy. He wanted Nicole to see them together. He wanted to rub it in her face, the young, beautiful, pregnant woman who had replaced her. And Vanessa played the part perfectly. She dressed in expensive clothes, touched her belly constantly, and looked at Nicole with a smug little smile that said, I won, you lost, get over it. Nicole hated her. She hated her with a burning intensity that scared her sometimes. But more than that, she hated herself for not being enough. Every time she saw Vanessa's pregnant belly, she felt that old familiar shame creeping back. The broken woman, the barren wife, the failure. But something strange started happening as the months went on. Nicole started noticing things. Small things. Things that didn't quite add up. The first thing she noticed was Vanessa's behavior around Derek. In public, Vanessa was affectionate, clinging, always touching him, always smiling at him. But when she thought no one was looking, her expression changed. She looked bored, distracted, sometimes even annoyed. Nicole caught her rolling her eyes once when Derek was talking to his lawyer. It was quick, just a flash, but Nicole saw it. Why would a woman who had fought so hard to steal someone's husband look so irritated by him? The second thing she noticed was even stranger. Vanessa was nervous. Not the normal kind of nervous that comes with court hearings and legal stress. A different kind. Jumpy. Paranoid. Always looking over her shoulder like she was waiting for something bad to happen. At first, Nicole thought she was imagining it. But then she saw it again, and again, and again. Vanessa was scared of something, or someone. The third thing, the thing that finally made her instinct scream, happened at a hearing about 3 months into the divorce proceedings. Nicole was sitting at her table, reviewing documents with Patricia, when she felt someone watching her. She looked up. Vanessa was staring across the room, but not at Nicole. She was staring at someone behind Nicole, near the back of the courtroom. Nicole turned around, following Vanessa's gaze, and her heart stopped. Marcus, her younger brother. He was sitting in the last row, arms crossed, jaw clenched, staring at the floor like he wanted to disappear. Nicole hadn't even known he was coming today. He hadn't told her. And the way he was sitting there, tense, uncomfortable, refusing to look at anyone, set off every alarm bell in her head. She turned back around and looked at Vanessa. Her face had gone pale. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. And for just 1 second, her mask slipped. She saw fear. Real, genuine, terrified fear. What the hell was going on? Nicole tried to catch Marcus after the hearing, but he disappeared before she could reach him. He didn't answer his calls that night, or the next day. When she finally got him on the phone 3 days later, he was evasive, distracted, making excuses about being busy with work. I just came to support you, that's all. Don't make it weird. But it was weird. Everything about it was weird. Nicole couldn't stop thinking about the way Vanessa had looked at him, the way Marcus had refused to make eye contact with anyone, the way they both seemed terrified of being in the same room. Something was going on. Something she didn't understand. And the more she thought about it, the more a horrible, impossible suspicion started to form in the back of her mind. No, it couldn't be. Marcus was my brother, my baby brother.
The person I had protected and supported my entire life. He would never. He could never. But the suspicion wouldn't go away. It gnawed at her, kept her awake at night, whispered terrible things in her ear when she was alone. And when Patricia mentioned that requesting a DNA test was standard procedure in cases involving child support and custody, just to confirm paternity, Nicole made a decision. Do it, she said quietly. Request the test. Patricia raised her eyebrow. You think he's not the father? Nicole didn't answer. She didn't know what she thought anymore. She just knew that something was very, very wrong, and she was going to find the truth, no matter how much it hurt.
The months that followed were a war. Not just a legal battle, a psychological war designed to break Nicole completely. Derek and his lawyer came at her from every angle. They questioned her finances. They dug into her work history. They painted her as bitter, unstable, a jealous ex-wife who couldn't accept that her husband had moved on. And Vanessa? Vanessa was always there. Every single hearing, every single meeting. She never missed an opportunity to remind Nicole exactly what she had lost. She would sit beside Derek, rubbing her growing belly, whispering in his ear, laughing at private jokes, while Nicole sat alone at her table, fighting to keep her composure. It was a performance. Nicole knew that now. Vanessa wasn't just there for support. She was there to intimidate, to humiliate, to make Nicole feel small and worthless and defeated. And for a while, it worked. There were nights when Nicole came home from court and collapsed on her bathroom floor, sobbing until she had nothing left. There were mornings when she couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of everything pressed down on her so hard she felt like she was suffocating. There were moments, dark, terrifying moments, when she wondered if any of this was even worth fighting for. What was she fighting for, anyway? A house full of painful memories? Money that would never buy back the years she had lost? The satisfaction of making Derek's life difficult? Some days she didn't know. Some days she wanted to call Patricia and tell her to settle, give Derek whatever he wanted, just make it stop. But every time she got close to giving up, she remembered the way Derek had looked at her that night, the coldness in his eyes, the cruelty in his voice. She's giving me what you never could, and the anger would rise again. No, she would not let him win. She would not let him walk away from this marriage thinking he had broken her completely. She still had fight left, even if it was buried deep, even if she had to dig for it every single day. The DNA test became a turning point. When Patricia filed the motion requesting paternity confirmation, Derek's lawyer barely blinked. Standard procedure, he said. Nothing to worry about. Derek himself seemed almost amused by the request. He signed the consent forms with a smirk, leaned back in his chair, and said loud enough for Nicole to hear, "This is just going to prove what everyone already knows. That baby is mine." Vanessa, however, did not seem amused. Nicole watched her carefully as the papers were signed. Vanessa's smile was frozen in place, but her eyes told a different story. She was gripping Derek's arm too tightly, her breathing was shallow, her gaze kept darting toward the door like she was calculating an escape route. And she never, not once, looked in Nicole's direction. Something was wrong. Nicole could feel it in her bones, but she still didn't have proof. Just suspicion. Just instinct. Just the look on Vanessa's face every time Marcus's name was mentioned. Marcus. Nicole had tried to talk to him several more times since that day in the courtroom, but every conversation was the same. Short, awkward, filled with deflections and excuses. He was busy. He was stressed. He didn't want to talk about the divorce because it was too depressing. But the more he avoided her, the more Nicole's suspicion grew. She started paying attention to things she had never noticed before. She remembered how Marcus and Derek had become friends a few years ago. Derek had hired Marcus for some construction work, and they had started hanging out, watching football together, going to bars, doing whatever men do when they bond. She thought it was sweet at the time. Her husband and her brother, getting along like family. But now she wondered, when exactly had Derek introduced Marcus to Vanessa? Had they met before Nicole even knew Vanessa existed? Had something happened between them? The questions tormented her. She couldn't ask Marcus directly. He would just deny it, and she had no evidence. She couldn't ask Derek. He would use it against her in court, twist it into proof that she was paranoid and unstable. All she could do was wait. Wait for the DNA test. Wait for the truth. The weeks crawled by. The court dates continued, and with each passing day, the tension in that courtroom grew thicker, heavier, more suffocating. Derek's confidence never wavered. He strutted into every hearing like he owned the place. Vanessa, glued to his side, his lawyer spinning stories about his bright future and his growing family. He talked about the baby constantly, how excited he was to be a father, how he was already decorating the nursery, how Vanessa was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Every word was a knife in Nicole's chest. But she noticed something else too. Vanessa was getting more nervous. As the due date for the DNA results approached, Vanessa's perfect composure started to crack. She stopped smiling as much. She stopped touching her belly with that smug, possessive pride. She started looking pale, tired, anxious, like a woman carrying a secret that was eating her alive. Nicole watched her like a hawk. She didn't know what she was waiting for, a confession, a breakdown, some moment of truth, but she knew it was coming. She could feel it building in the air like a storm about to break. The final hearing was scheduled on a Tuesday in March. The DNA results would be presented. The judge would make decisions about custody, child support, and the division of assets. Everything would be decided in one day. Nicole barely slept the night before. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities. What if the test confirmed Derek was the father? What if her suspicion was wrong? What if she had imagined the whole thing? The looks between Vanessa and Marcus, the fear in Vanessa's eyes, the way Marcus couldn't meet her gaze? What if she was just a paranoid, broken woman grasping at straws? But there was another possibility. A darker one. One she could barely bring herself to think about. What if she was right? What if that baby wasn't Derek's? What if Vanessa had been lying this whole time? And what if the real father was someone Nicole had trusted her entire life? The thought made her sick, but it also made her determined. Tomorrow, she would know the truth. One way or another, the lies would end. Nicole got out of bed as the sun rose. She showered. She dressed in her best suit, the one Patricia had told her to wear for important hearings. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. She looked older, harder, but also stronger. Somewhere in the wreckage of the last year, she had found something she didn't know she had. Resilience. The drive to the courthouse felt surreal. Nicole gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She parked, walked through the heavy doors, passed through security, and made her way to the courtroom. When she stepped inside, Derek was already there. Of course he was. He was sitting at his table, leaning back in his chair, chatting casually with his lawyer like this was just another day. Vanessa was beside him. But something was different. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't touching her belly with that smug, possessive pride. She sat completely still,
her face pale, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. She looked like a woman waiting for an execution. Nicole felt a chill run down her spine. She took her seat beside Patricia, her eyes scanning the room, and then she saw him. Marcus. He was sitting in the back row again, in the same spot as before. His arms were crossed, his jaw was tight, he was staring at the floor, refusing to look at anyone. Nicole's stomach dropped. He was here. Why was he here? What did he know? The judge entered, and everyone rose. Nicole's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand. This was it, the moment of truth. The judge settled into her seat and shuffled through some papers. She looked up at the room with a calm, unreadable expression. She said, "We have several matters to address today. But first, I believe we have the results of the DNA test that was requested by the respondent's counsel." She held up a sealed envelope. Nicole's breath caught in her throat. Across the aisle, Derek smiled. That confident, arrogant smile that Nicole had grown to hate. He squeezed Vanessa's hand and whispered something in his ear. Vanessa didn't react. She just sat there, frozen, like a statue made of ice. The judge opened the envelope slowly. She pulled out a single sheet of paper and read it silently. And then something changed in her expression. It was subtle, just a slight raise of her eyebrows, a small pause before she spoke. But Nicole saw it, and in that moment, she knew something was very, very wrong.
The judge looked up from the paper. Her eyes moved from Derek to Vanessa, then swept across the room before landing on someone in the back. Marcus. Nicole's heart stopped. "Well," the judge said slowly, her voice carrying a weight that silenced the entire room. "This is unexpected." Derek's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" The judge looked directly at him. "Mr. Patterson, according to this DNA test, you are not the biological father of this child." The room exploded into murmurs. Derek's face went white. Vanessa let out a strangled sound, something between a gasp and a sob. But the judge wasn't finished. She looked down at the paper again, then back up at the room, her expression hardening. "The test indicates that the biological father is..." She paused, letting the silence stretch. Nicole couldn't breathe. "A man named Marcus Elaine Thompson." The world stopped. Nicole heard the name, but her brain refused to process it. Marcus Elaine Thompson. Her brother. Her baby brother. The person she had protected her entire life. The person she had trusted more than anyone except her own husband. He was the father. He was the father of the baby that had destroyed her marriage. He had been sleeping with Vanessa, maybe even before the affair with Derek began. Her own brother had betrayed her. Nicole turned around slowly, her body moving on its own, and looked at Marcus. He was standing now, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. For a moment, their gazes locked. And in his eyes, Nicole saw everything. Guilt, shame, fear, and the desperate, pathetic hope that she might somehow forgive him. She wouldn't. The night before the final hearing, Nicole couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind running through every possibility like a broken record that wouldn't stop. What if she was wrong? What if the DNA test proved exactly what Derek expected? That he was the father, that Vanessa was telling the truth, that Nicole's suspicions were nothing more than the paranoid fantasies of a bitter, broken woman. She had built so much hope on this test. Too much hope, maybe. If it came back confirming Derek's paternity, she didn't know what she would do. She would lose the case. She would lose her credibility. She would look like a jealous ex-wife grasping at straws, desperate to destroy her husband's new happiness. Derek's lawyer would tear her apart. And Derek? Derek would smile that smug, arrogant smile and walk out of that courtroom with everything. The money, the assets, the victory. And her. Vanessa, the woman who had stolen her life. Nicole pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the spiral. She couldn't think like this. She had to trust her instincts. She had seen the fear in Vanessa's eyes. She had noticed the strange tension between Vanessa and Marcus. Something was wrong. She knew it. She felt it in her bones. But knowing something and proving something were two very different things. Around 3 a.m, Nicole gave up on sleep. She got out of bed, wrapped herself in a robe, and went to the kitchen to make tea. The house was silent, empty. It had been silent and empty for months now, ever since Derek left, but tonight the silence felt heavier, oppressive, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what tomorrow would bring. Nicole sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the warm mug, and let her mind wander back to Marcus, her baby brother, the person she had protected her entire life. When their mother got sick, Nicole was 18 and Marcus was only 12. Their father worked constantly, trying to pay the medical bills, and Nicole became the one who took care of Marcus. She made sure he did his homework, she cooked his meals, she held him when he cried at night, scared that their mother was going to die. And when their mother did die, 2 years later, Nicole was the one who kept the family together. She was the one who made sure Marcus graduated high school, got into college, found his footing in the world. She had sacrificed so much for him, given so much, loved him so completely. And now, sitting alone in her kitchen in the middle of the night, she was forced to confront a horrifying possibility. What if he had betrayed her? What if the brother she had devoted her life to protecting had been lying to her face for years? What if he was the reason her marriage had fallen apart? Nicole set down her mug. Her hands were shaking. She didn't want to believe it. She desperately, desperately didn't want to believe it. But the signs were all there. The way Marcus avoided her calls, the way he couldn't meet her eyes in the courtroom, the way Vanessa had looked at him with pure terror, like she was staring at a ghost. And there was something else, something Nicole had tried to ignore but couldn't push out of her mind any longer. About 2 years ago, around the time Derek started becoming distant, Marcus went through a strange phase. He had become secretive, withdrawn, always busy with something he wouldn't explain. Nicole had asked him about it at the time, worried that he was in trouble, but Marcus had brushed her off. "It's nothing," he had said, "just some personal stuff I'm dealing with. Don't worry about it." Nicole had accepted that explanation. She had been too wrapped up in her own crumbling marriage to push harder. But now she wondered, was that when it started? Was that when Marcus met Vanessa? Was that when the affair began? The questions tormented her for hours. By the time the sun rose, Nicole was exhausted, her eyes red and burning, but she felt something else too. Clarity. She didn't have proof, not yet, but she had her instincts, and her instincts had never failed her before. If Marcus was hiding something, if he was connected to Vanessa in the way she suspected, the DNA test would reveal it. All she had to do was wait. Nicole showered, dressed, and drove to the courthouse in a daze. The building loomed in front of her, cold and imposing, its stone facade reflecting the gray morning sky. She sat in her car for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady her breathing. This was it. The final hearing. The moment of truth. Whatever happened in that courtroom today would change everything. Patricia was waiting for her inside. The lawyer looked as sharp as ever. Perfectly pressed suit, confident posture, a calm expression that betrayed nothing. But when she saw Nicole's face, her eyes softened a little. "Rough night?" she asked quietly. Nicole nodded. "You could say that." Patricia put a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens in there, we're ready. You've done everything right, Nicole. No matter what that test says, you should be proud of how far you've come." Nicole wanted to believe her. She really did. But she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, and not necessarily for the better. They entered the courtroom together. Nicole took her seat at the respondent's table, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She looked calm on the outside. Inside, she was falling apart. Derek arrived a few minutes later. He swept into the room like he owned it, Vanessa on his arm, his lawyer trailing behind. He was wearing an expensive new suit, probably bought with money he expected to take from Nicole, and his hair was freshly cut. He looked like a man who had already won. But Vanessa looked different. Nicole noticed it immediately. The confident, smug woman who had paraded through every previous hearing was gone. In her place was someone pale, drawn, and visibly anxious. Her eyes were darting around the room, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She kept glancing toward the door like she was waiting for someone or dreading someone's arrival. Nicole's instincts sharpened. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The minutes ticked by. The courtroom filled with the usual observers, a few lawyers waiting for other cases, some bored-looking clerks, a handful of people Nicole didn't recognize. And then the door opened one more time. Nicole turned around, and her heart stopped. Marcus walked in. He was dressed in a wrinkled shirt, his hair uncombed, his face haggard like he hadn't slept in days. He looked terrible, destroyed. And the moment he stepped through that door, Vanessa made a sound, a small strangled gasp that she tried to cover with a cough. Nicole watched her carefully. Vanessa's face had gone white. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were turning purple. She was staring at Marcus with an expression of pure, undisguised terror. Nicole's blood ran cold. She looked at Marcus. He had taken a seat in the back row, the same spot as before. His arms were crossed over his chest, his head bowed, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man waiting for an execution. And in that moment, Nicole knew. She didn't need the DNA test to confirm it. She could see it in their faces. Marcus's guilt, Vanessa's fear, the invisible thread of panic connecting them across the room. Something had happened between them. Something they had both been desperately trying to hide. And today, in this courtroom, the truth was finally going to come out. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Nicole stood on legs that felt like they might collapse at any moment. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The judge settled into her seat and began shuffling through papers. She spoke about procedural matters, legal formalities, things that Nicole barely heard. All she could focus on was the sealed envelope sitting on the judge's desk, the DNA results, the truth. Finally.
The judge opened the envelope slowly. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. She read it silently, her expression unreadable. And then she paused. It was a small pause, just a few seconds, but Nicole saw it. She saw the judge's eyebrows rise slightly. She saw her lips press together. She saw her eyes flick up from the paper to scan the room, landing for just a moment on Marcus in the back row. Nicole's stomach dropped. The judge looked back down at the paper, then up at the courtroom. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but heavy with something Nicole couldn't identify. "Well," she said slowly, "this is unexpected." Derek?
The judge's words hung in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. "This is unexpected." Derek's confident smile wavered. For the first time since the divorce proceedings began, Nicole saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face. He glanced at Vanessa, then back at the judge, trying to maintain his composure. "I'm not sure I understand, Your Honor," Derek said, his voice still steady, but with an edge of nervousness creeping in. "The test should confirm that I'm the father. There's no question about it." The judge looked at him with an expression that was almost pitying. Almost. She held up the paper, her eyes scanning it one more time before she spoke. "Mr. Patterson, according to this DNA analysis, conducted by an accredited laboratory and verified by this court..." She paused. The silence was deafening. Nicole could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear Vanessa's shallow, panicked breathing. She could feel the tension radiating from Marcus in the back row like heat from a fire. "You are not the biological father of this child." The words landed like a bomb. For a moment, nothing happened. The courtroom was frozen, suspended in a single, impossible second. Then, chaos erupted. Derek shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That's impossible," he shouted. "There has to be a mistake. Run the test again. Someone contaminated the samples. This is..." "Mr. Patterson, sit down," the judge commanded, her voice sharp and authoritative. "The test was conducted according to all standard protocols. There is no mistake." Derek didn't sit. He stood there, his hands trembling, his face cycling through emotions, confusion, denial, rage, disbelief. He turned to Vanessa, and for the first time Nicole saw him look at her with something other than adoration. He looked at her with suspicion. "Vanessa," he said slowly, his voice dangerously quiet, "what the hell is going on?" Vanessa was crying. Tears streamed down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup into dark streaks. Her hands were pressed against her pregnant belly, not with pride this time, but with fear, like she was trying to protect herself from what was coming. "Derek, I can explain," she whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted..." "Explain what?" Derek's voice rose, cracking with emotion. "Explain that you've been lying to me? Explain that the baby I've been planning for, preparing for, telling everyone about, isn't even mine?" He grabbed her arm, not gently. "Whose is it, Vanessa? Whose baby are you carrying?" Vanessa flinched. She tried to pull away, but Derek held on, his grip tightening. "Whose?" he demanded again. The judge banged her gavel. "Mr. Patterson, release her immediately, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Derek let go. He stepped back, breathing hard, his eyes wild. He looked like a man whose entire world had just collapsed, which, Nicole realized, was exactly what had happened. For months, Derek had strutted into this courtroom like a conquering hero. He had flaunted Vanessa, boasted about becoming a father, demanded assets to support his growing family. He had humiliated Nicole at every turn, made her feel worthless, made her believe that she was the failure. And now? Now he was the one standing in the wreckage, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Nicole should have felt satisfaction. She should have felt vindicated, triumphant, finally proven right. But she didn't, because the judge wasn't finished. The test doesn't just exclude Mr. Patterson as the father, the judge continued, her voice heavy. It also identifies the biological father through a familial match in our database. Nicole's blood turned to ice. A familial match. That meant the father was someone whose DNA was already in the system. Someone connected to this case. Someone connected to her. The judge looked up from the paper. Her eyes swept across the courtroom, passing over Nicole, over Derek, over Vanessa's tear-stained face, and then they stopped. On Marcus. According to the results, the judge said slowly, the biological father of this child is Marcus Elaine Thompson. The name echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Nicole felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling, her knuckles white, her vision blurring. Marcus, her brother, her baby brother, the person she had raised, protected, loved unconditionally for her entire life. He was the father. He had been sleeping with Vanessa. He had gotten her pregnant, and he had watched, silently, cowardly, pathetically, as Nicole's entire life was destroyed by a lie he could have exposed at any moment. Nicole turned around slowly. Every movement felt like it was happening underwater. Her body didn't feel like her own. She found Marcus in the back row. He was standing now, his face the color of ash, his eyes wide with terror. He looked like a cornered animal, desperate and afraid. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Nicole saw everything. She saw the guilt that had been eating him alive for months. She saw the shame he had tried to bury beneath excuses and avoidance. She saw the cowardice that had kept him silent while his sister suffered. And she saw something else too. Fear. He was afraid of her. Afraid of what she would say. Afraid of what she would do. Afraid of losing her forever. Good. He should be afraid. Nicole! Marcus's voice cracked. He took a step toward her, his hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. Nicole, please let me explain. I never meant for this to happen. I swear to God, I never wanted to hurt you. Don't. The word came out of Nicole's mouth like a whip crack. Sharp, final, absolute. Marcus froze. Don't you dare, Nicole continued, her voice low and trembling with rage. Don't you dare stand there and tell me you never wanted to hurt me. You have been lying to me for years. Years, Marcus. You watched me fall apart. You watched me blame myself. You watched me lose everything, my marriage, my self-worth, my faith in love, and you said nothing. Her voice rose with each word, the pain and anger she had been suppressing for months finally breaking free. I defended you. I protected you. When everyone else doubted you, I was the one who believed in you. I sacrificed for you, Marcus. I gave up so much to make sure you had a good life, and this is how you repay me? By sleeping with the woman who destroyed my marriage? By getting her pregnant and letting me take the fall? Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. She didn't care who saw. How long?
she demanded. How long have you been sleeping with her? Marcus's head dropped. His shoulders shook. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. 2 years. 2 years! The words hit Nicole like a physical blow. 2 years ago, she was still married, still fighting to save her relationship, still wondering why Derek had become so cold and distant. And the whole time her brother was sleeping with the woman who would eventually take her husband away. Did you know? Nicole asked, her voice cracking. Did you know she was seeing Derek too? Marcus's silence was the only answer she needed to know. You knew. You knew she was cheating on you with my husband. Or cheating on my husband with you. However this sick, twisted thing worked, you knew. And you didn't tell me. Marcus finally looked up. His face was a mess of tears and snot, his expression contorted with anguish. I wanted to tell you, he choked out. Every single day I wanted to tell you. But Vanessa, she threatened me. She said if I told anyone the truth, she would destroy me. She said that she would tell people I was obsessed with her, that I was dangerous, that I forced her. I was scared, Nicole. I was so scared. So you let me be destroyed instead. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a fact that could never be undone. Marcus had been afraid of what Vanessa might do to his reputation. So he sacrificed his sister's happiness, his sister's marriage, his sister's entire life to protect himself. The betrayal was so complete, so total,
that Nicole couldn't even process it. This wasn't just about an affair. This wasn't just about a lie. This was about everything she had believed about her family, about loyalty, about love. It was all a lie. Her husband had betrayed her, the woman he left her for had betrayed him, and her own brother, the person she trusted most in the world, had betrayed them all. Nicole turned away from Marcus. She couldn't look at him anymore. Looking at him made her feel like she was drowning. Instead, she looked at Vanessa. The woman was sobbing uncontrollably now, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders heaving. The confident, smug mistress who had paraded through this courtroom for months was gone. In her place was a terrified young woman whose carefully constructed web of lies had finally collapsed around her. You used everyone, Nicole said quietly. You used Derek for his money. You used Marcus for, what, excitement? A backup plan? And when you got pregnant and didn't know whose baby it was, you picked the one with the bigger bank account. Vanessa looked up, her face a mess of running mascara and desperation. That's not... Don't lie to me, Nicole cut her off. Not now. Not after everything. I don't want your excuses. I don't want your apologies. I just want you to know that I see you. I see exactly who you are. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire silent courtroom. And I hope it was worth it, because you've lost everything. Derek won't want you now. Marcus is too weak to stand by you. And that baby you're carrying, that child is going to grow up knowing that their mother destroyed 3 lives for money and attention. Vanessa let out a wail of despair, but Nicole had already turned away. Finally, she looked at Derek. He was sitting in his chair, slumped forward, staring at nothing. The arrogant, confident man who had walked into this courtroom was gone. In his place was a hollow shell, destroyed by the same lies he had used to destroy Nicole. For a moment, just a moment, Nicole felt something unexpected. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, just recognition. She knew what he was feeling. The shock, the betrayal, the desperate search for something that made sense. She had felt it all herself the night he told her about the affair. Now it was his turn. "Derek?" she said softly. He looked up. His eyes were red, his face drawn. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Derek?" Nicole asked. Her voice was calm now, almost gentle. "How does it feel? How does it feel to find out that everything you believed was a lie? How does it feel to realize that the person you trusted was using you the whole time?" Derek opened his mouth, but no sound came out. What could he say? What defense could he possibly offer? He had left his wife for a woman who was pregnant with another man's child. He had spent months humiliating Nicole, trying to take everything she had, parading his mistress around like a trophy, and the whole time, the baby he was so proud of wasn't even his. The irony was almost poetic. Derek had wanted a family. He had left Nicole because she couldn't give him children. And now he had discovered that the child he thought was his belonged to someone else. He had thrown away an 18-year marriage for nothing. "I didn't know," Derek whispered. "Nicole, I swear I didn't know. If I had known..." "If you had known what? You would have stayed with me? You would have loved me? You would have treated me like I mattered?" She shook her head slowly. "No, Derek. You showed me exactly who you are. You left me because you thought I was broken. You called Vanessa your real family. You told me she was giving you what I never could." Her voice hardened. "Well, congratulations. She gave you exactly what you deserved. A lie." Derek flinched like she had slapped him. "Nicole, please." "We're done," Nicole said firmly. "We were done the moment you walked out that door. The only difference is, now you know exactly what you lost." She turned to her lawyer, Patricia, who had been watching the entire scene with barely concealed astonishment. "I think we're finished here," Nicole said quietly. "File whatever motions you need. I want this divorce finalized immediately, and I want everything I'm entitled to. Every asset, every penny, everything he tried to take from me." Patricia nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "With pleasure." Nicole picked up her purse. She straightened her shoulders, and without another glance at Derek, at Vanessa, at Marcus, she walked toward the door. Behind her, she heard voices. Derek calling her name, Marcus sobbing, Vanessa wailing, the judge banging her gavel, demanding order. Nicole didn't stop. She pushed through the heavy courtroom doors and stepped into the hallway. The noise faded behind her. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, all of it stayed in that room. She kept walking. Down the corridor, through the lobby, out the front doors of the courthouse. And when she finally stepped outside into the cold morning air, Nicole stopped. She tilted her face up toward the gray sky. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt free. Not happy, not healed, not whole, but free. The lies were exposed, the truth was out, and she had survived. She had walked through fire and she was still standing. Whatever came next, the legal battles, the emotional fallout, the long road to rebuilding her life, she would face it. Alone if she had to, because she finally knew something that had taken her far too long to learn. She didn't need Derek. She didn't need Marcus. She didn't need anyone's validation or approval or love to be complete. She was enough. She had always been enough. And anyone who couldn't see that didn't deserve a place in her life. Nicole took another breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. Then she squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked toward her car. Behind her, the courthouse stood silent. Inside, 3 people sat in the wreckage of their own choices, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart. But Nicole didn't look back. She was done looking back. From now on, she was only moving forward.
The weeks that followed the courtroom revelation were strange and surreal. Nicole moved through her days in a kind of daze, going through the motions of life while her mind slowly processed everything that had happened. The divorce was finalized quickly, with the DNA results exposing Derek's humiliation and Vanessa's lies. Derek's legal position completely collapsed. His lawyer tried to negotiate, tried to salvage something from the wreckage, but Patricia was ruthless. She had watched Nicole suffer for months. Now she made sure Nicole got everything she deserved. Nicole kept the house. She kept her retirement fund. She received a significant portion of the savings Derek had tried to claim for his growing family. The family that had turned out to be built on nothing but lies. Derek didn't fight it. How could he? He had walked into that courtroom expecting victory and walked out with nothing. No wife, no mistress, no baby, no dignity. The last Nicole heard, Vanessa had disappeared. Some said she moved back to her hometown, wherever that was. Others said she was staying with family, trying to figure out what to do now that her scheme had collapsed. The baby, Marcus's baby, was due in a few months. Nicole didn't know what would happen when it was born. She didn't know if Marcus would try to be a father, or if Vanessa would shut him out, or if the child would grow up never knowing the chaos that surrounded its conception. She tried not to think about it. It wasn't her problem anymore. Marcus tried to reach out. Of course he did. The calls started the day after the hearing, then the texts, then the emails. Then, when Nicole ignored all of those, he started showing up at her house. The first time, Nicole saw his car in her driveway and felt her heart lurch. For a moment, just a moment, the old instincts kicked in. The protective big sister, the one who had always been there for him, the one who had sacrificed so much to make sure he had a good life. But then she remembered his face in that courtroom, the guilt, the cowardice, the 2 years of silence while she suffered, and the instinct died. She didn't open the door. She sat in her living room, listening to him knock, listening to him call her name, listening to him beg for forgiveness through the wood. "Nicole, please, I'm so sorry. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, just let me explain. Just give me a chance. You're my sister. You're the only family I have left. Please don't shut me out." His voice cracked. She could hear him crying, and still, she didn't move. After about 20 minutes, the knocking stopped. She heard his footsteps retreating down the driveway. She heard his car start and drive away. And then, silence. He came back 3 more times that week. Each time, Nicole ignored him. Each time, he left more broken than before. The 4th time, he didn't knock. He just slipped a letter under her door and left. Nicole found it later that evening. A handwritten letter, 3 pages long, the paper stained with what looked like tears. She held it in her hands for a long moment, feeling its weight. Then she walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and dropped it inside without reading a single word. She wasn't ready. Maybe she would never be ready. Some betrayals were too deep to forgive. Some wounds were too raw to heal with words on a page. Maybe someday, years from now,
She would be able to look at Marcus without feeling that knife twist in her chest. Maybe someday she would be able to hear his voice without remembering the courtroom, the DNA results, the 2 years of lies. But today was not that day, and tomorrow wouldn't be either. For now, Nicole needed to focus on herself. For the first time in 18 years, she had no one else to take care of. No husband to support, no brother to protect, no one else's needs to put before her own. It was terrifying and liberating. She started small. She repainted the bedroom, the room where Derek used to sleep beside her, where she used to lie awake wondering what she had done wrong. She chose a soft blue color, peaceful and calm, nothing like the dark gray Derek had insisted on years ago. She threw out his things. The clothes he had left behind, the books he never read, the awards and trophies from his business that he had displayed so proudly in the living room. All of it went into boxes, and the boxes went to donation. She didn't want any reminders. She wanted a clean slate. She started cooking again. Really cooking, not just surviving on frozen meals and takeout. She made recipes she hadn't tried in years, things Derek always said he didn't like, things she had stopped making because it was easier to just give in. Turns out, she loved those recipes. She had just forgotten. She reconnected with old friends, the ones who had drifted away during her marriage, the ones she had neglected because Derek always wanted her home, always needed her attention. They welcomed her back with open arms. No judgment, no questions, just warmth and support and the simple joy of companionship. And slowly, so slowly, Nicole began to feel like herself again. Not the woman she had been before Derek. That woman was gone forever. But a new version, a stronger version, a woman who had been broken and had rebuilt herself from the ashes. One evening, about 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Nicole sat on her back porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the clouds streaked with gold. It was beautiful. Peaceful, the kind of moment she had stopped noticing during the dark years of her marriage. She thought about everything that had happened, the love she had given so freely, the trust she had placed in people who didn't deserve it, the years she had spent making herself smaller so others could feel bigger, and she thought about what she had learned. She had learned that love, real love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't demand sacrifice without giving anything in return. It doesn't make you feel worthless or broken or not enough. Real love sees you. All of you. The flaws and the strengths, the fears and the dreams, and it stays anyway. Derek hadn't loved her. Not really. He had loved what she could give him. Support, stability, devotion. But when she couldn't give him the one thing he wanted most, he discarded her like she was nothing. That wasn't love. That was possession. And Marcus had loved himself more than he loved her. When faced with a choice between protecting his sister and protecting his own reputation, he chose himself every single time. That wasn't love either. That was cowardice. But Nicole had learned something else too, something more important. She had learned to love herself. For the first time in her life, she understood that her worth wasn't tied to a man's affection. It wasn't measured by whether she could have children. It wasn't determined by how much she sacrificed or how hard she tried to please others. Her worth was hers. It had always been hers. And no one, not Derek, not Vanessa, not Marcus, could take it away from her. She had spent so many years looking for validation in other people's eyes, looking for proof that she was enough, looking for love that would make her feel complete. But the truth was, she had been complete all along. She had just been looking in the wrong places. Nicole took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill her lungs. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of purple and blue. And in that quiet moment, sitting alone on her porch, surrounded by the peaceful silence of her new life, Nicole made a promise to herself. She would never again shrink herself for someone else's comfort. She would never again accept crumbs from people who should have given her the whole meal. She would never again let fear of loneliness trap her in relationships that made her feel more alone than solitude ever could. She was done being the woman who gave everything and received nothing. From now on, she would be the woman who knew her worth and demanded others recognize it too. And if that meant being alone, so be it. She would rather be alone and whole than partnered and broken. Nicole smiled. A real smile, the kind that reached her eyes for the first time in months. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if she would ever love again or trust again or open her heart to someone new. But she knew one thing for certain. She was going to be okay. Not because Derek was gone, not because she won the divorce, not because Vanessa and Marcus had been exposed, but because she had finally found the one thing she had been searching for her entire life. Herself. And that was worth more than any
family, more than any love that asked her to be less than she was. Nicole stood up from her chair, stretched her arms toward the darkening sky, and walked back inside her house. Her house, her life, her future. As she closed the door behind her, she took one last look at the fading sunset. "Thank you," she whispered, not to anyone in particular, maybe to the universe, maybe to herself, maybe to the woman she used to be, who had suffered so much, so that this new version of herself could finally emerge. Then she turned off the porch light and stepped into the warmth of her home, alone, but not lonely, broken once, but whole now, and ready, finally ready, to start the next chapter of her life.